2, 1. And welcome from the hottest place on Earth, everyone, also known as Amsterdam. How is rainy England for you, Xeno?
It's amazing. It's great. It's like the best thing in the world, including the rain. The rain's good.
I'm so jealous. I'm so jealous. Oh my god. So, how's it going, man?
Yeah, it's good. Apparently, it's hit like 40 degrees centigrade in like France and things, and there's like some genuine warnings of bad temperature times.
Yeah, we've hit like 35s and higher, and they're already like, emergency situation. But they have an emergency situation where there's like one drop of snow, and they're just like, oh my god. So it's I always
Sure
take
that.
these warnings for what it is, but it's pretty hot.
Yeah.
Talking about something that's really hot, the topic of this week. What is it, Xeno?
Must not belch. Must refuse to belch. I belched. Sorry, I apologize. I feel gross. No, that's not actually the topic this week. The topic this week is something that has come to light from my friends and returning players of Warframe. Is Warframe really new player and casual player or returning player friendly? And we're going to go into this. So a little background to this. Friend of mine, named, I think he's Cypher Invictus, or he's Sensei Cypher. He changes his name so much. He's actually Loz's brother.
Mm-hmm.
And he recently came back to Warframe because we're going to TennoCon. And he hadn't played since, I want to say 2017, when the Plains of Eidolon had come out. He didn't play Eidolon, he didn't play the Sacrifice, he didn't do Fortuna. He hadn't touched it at all for years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he came back, and the first thing we started to look for him to do is the Sacrifice. And he massively struggled to do it because he didn't have any amps. He's barely done anything with his operator. He hasn't got the experience. And the Sacrifice has a huge cliff of playability based on, or difficulty based on, are you able to do the previous stuff? Have you experienced the previous stuff? So this is the sort of topic we'll be actually discussing. And I don't know how much you remember, Michelle, but what was your experience way back when with Warframe's new player experience? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and how my first months were as a new player and understanding the things of the game. So
Yep.
I had an entirely different experience than most people have right now. I think we called that Purgatory 2013, where if you joined the game, it would just be like this white area, and it would just have like holograms of Grenier. You would like fight it, and it wouldn't be like the tutorial we have today. That said, it took me about 3 months to figure out that we had abilities in the game, because we still had these ability mod cards that you had to throw in your Warframe. And I remember ranking a Warframe all the way up to 30, and then my cousin invited me to play, and he was like, why are you not using your abilities? And I was like, we have abilities? We have abilities? But of course, that's entirely different from when I was a new player to how the tutorials right now is. I think for me it's really hard to comment on that, but I was a bit of a slow learner. The mod system was something that I only really figured out after like a year or so as to like how to efficiently mod and how that worked. But I was alright. Like, I was enjoying Warframe, but it wasn't all directly clear to me from the start.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. When I first started playing Warframe, it was, I don't know what this purgatory year of 2013 thing is, but
Assassin's
when
Creed had it as well.
what was
I'll see if I can look it up. Go on, and I'll see if I
sure,
can look it
okay,
up.
cool. So when we first started, we started during, I think it was like Operation Slingstone or something like this, and many of our clan members basically said, "Oh no, you're too low level to do this. You're not
Mm-hmm.
appropriately geared to do this." And it was a bit of a bugbear for Loz and I, but it doesn't matter. We were still enjoying the game to no end.
Mm-hmm.
We were playing back when damage was, I think it was just like, just IPS. That I don't think there was any. God, there definitely wasn't any elemental damage types. There weren't any combo damage types. I don't think. I
Mm-hmm.
might be wrong. It's really hard to remember. We're talking years and years and years
Yeah.
ago now, when it was and it was a huge jump to learn how to even wall run. When we started bringing new players into the game, our first thing to do was actually teach them how to wall run because it was so difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Warframe has come a long way since the early days, but I'm not sure if it's really there. I noticed that you just swapped us to US.
Yeah, yeah, we were having some synchronizing issues.
That's fine. Happens.
Yeah. So
yeah.
No, finish up.
Well, I pretty much did finish
Right.
off, but
Okay.
Do you have any follow up?
All right. So one thing that I think there is a core within our new player experience that hasn't changed when it comes to Warframe, because it's still Warframe and it's still the Warframe game. But I do think that there is a massive difference into how new players enter the game and what kind of systems there are. As you said, there weren't the dual stat damages, and like there was so much when we joined in that wasn't there. That wasn't there then. That is there now. So I think that when I don't know how much I can talk about my new player experience given how much has changed. So I want to highlight Cold Daylight, who just said in the chat, as a new player myself, I can say that Warframe has a very steep learning curve and a lot of information in the game to help you get a good grip on the basics of the game. So I think that yeah, go ahead.
I certainly agree with this, right? Mm-hmm. Also, thank you, Cold Daylight, because that's helped us usher this conversation. I think that Warframe doesn't do a brilliant job at teaching people how to do certain things, right? Its tutorial system is very heavily reliant on external resources. So we're talking
wikis,
content creators.
guides.
No. Content creators. I was trying to point to both you and I. And I was like, yes, content creators. Wikis, yes. There are streams, Twitch streams. There are so many external resources that are they are suitable and not suitable for a game like Warframe at the same time. The thing that really would help Warframe is something to direct people to these external resources, especially the damn wiki, right? Without foreknowledge that the wiki even exists, what the hell are you supposed to do?
Well, should the game do that? Like, that's my question on that. Should the game reference tutorials, wikis, external resources? Because I know, as a reference, that over the past years, one of the things that's been sometimes discussed is that people offered, hey, there are so many great tutorial and Warframe review videos, why don't you link those of your partners? Why don't you link them in the game so that people can go to them? But at the same time, right now, instead of having that, you now have these little videos. If you hover over the ability cards, you can kind of see what they do, and you can figure it out yourself. And I'm a big proponent of the game needs to provide everything. So if there's something on the wiki, and let's say there is like a lore thing, let's take for example the ghouls. I don't really think the ghouls still exist to me, because they haven't really been introduced and I don't know much about them other than that they appear. And you can say, well, it's on the wiki. Well, it's in the comics. I don't consider that part of the game. As long as it's not served to you within the game, yes, it may exist, but it doesn't really exist in the game experience. So I think that referencing to something like a wiki is really, really useful, especially right now. And maybe it's a really useful thing to do if Warframe does not have the resources yet or hasn't made those available within the game, but I don't think it should be their end game, pardon the pun, to have new players go into Warframe and then have this message of like, go to the wiki, go to the videos, go to the Twitch streams and check out the information and learn how to play this game. I think it should be inside the game.
I agree. It's difficult because if you have resources that take you away from the game, then what's to say you'll end up back there? It's one of the big things of being a content creator is making sure that you are doing enough to keep the user journey going. This might sound really daft, but if you get to the end of a YouTube video and you're like, now what? You'll just close the tab down, right? So when you finish watching a YouTube video, you'll have options. You'll have end slate cards that are created by content creators trying to navigate you to where they want you to go, which is great. Then you'll actually have suggestions populated after the video has disappeared. So like the video closes away, and then they'll actually put the thumbnails of all the videos in front of you, right? The next thing that they'll do is have suggestions on the right hand side, right? So if you're not in full picture mode or whatever, and you can actually see these suggestions, that is another way of doing it. And even so, sometimes the top one of the suggestion, or most of the time, the top one of the suggestion is the next video in the playlist, which is brilliant, right? So that is a big part of the user journey. So if you quickly and violently, abruptly, I mean, how many words can I describe this? You go and take your players and send them outside of the game, that's not good for your game.
No.
You know, you are throwing them. So one of the best things to do, in my opinion, do up the codex, right? Massively do up the codex, move the data from the wiki, because that WikiA is horrible. The amount of JavaScript that happens in the background is just, you need a bloody specialized web browser to take that thing. But anyway, then have it link to, so if you're like, oh, these are all the different resources, you can click on this info button in the game and it'll pop up. It'll make a pop-up which is basically linking to the wiki page of that resource, right? So you're not directly removing them from the game, you are still edging them forward with information that's populated by an external resource. But then it becomes super complicated because you have to make sure that that resource is safe. You know, if someone's came along and then started writing profanity all over that wiki page, right? That's not good for the game, right? And DE would be responsible because technically it's in the game.
Yeah. So no, like I fully agree with that. We need to work. The codex needs to be worked on. I think that the codex was intended as the in-game wiki, but the wiki remained to be far superior if you were looking for knowledge. What I'm more interested though in that, like I think everyone can agree that I need to switch cameras. I think that everyone can agree that the codex being improved is a good thing and is something that needs to happen sooner rather than later. However, I want to focus more on what are some of the biggest uphill challenges that Warframe comes across, especially for new players and casual players, but we're focusing on the new player experience now. So I kind of want to turn to Cold Daylight here in chat, or anyone else that's a new player or has recently been a new player. If you're here in chat or in the comments of the video, let us know what were the biggest challenge moments. Xeno highlighted one of his friend Cypher, who, when he was doing the sacrifice quest, had to use his amp, which he hadn't used before.
No, he didn't have one. That was the point.
He didn't even have one.
No, because he hadn't done the planes.
So he didn't have an amp, and all of a sudden he had to fight with his amp in a fight that was pretty challenging, which was from 0 to basically from 0 to 100 in no time. So where are the challenges, and how could those things be fixed? And are there a lot of those challenges? Are there a few of those challenges? I think that's really interesting because a codex could fix something with a lot of information. However, if the codex having more information would be the fix, I don't think that's the fix for everything. So I kind of want to like zero in into specific cases in particular. Sakuma says mods. What do you have to say on mods?
Honestly, the mod system is kind of poorly explained. There's one thing that is never explained in the tutorial of the mods, which is how you rank them up, right?
Mm-hmm.
I got a friend of mine to start playing. He never really continued because he's much more of a one and done gamer. So like he likes games that have endings to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he started playing Warframe, and he went, he got like a load of mods like Serration and whatever. And it's like, oh man, you could get like rank 10 versions of Serration. And he thought that the further you got into the game, the higher rank version of the mod you actually got. He didn't realize that you could rank up the mods himself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? It's not explained anywhere in the tutorial. I had to sit him down and basically say, you can do this. If you want to max out that damaged Serration to rank 3, you can do this via this method, because the game does not teach you how to do this at all.
So how do they explain the mod system? Do you remember
So
that?
it's more a case of when it's a it's a diorama, right?
Mm-hmm.
Multi-part diorama, where from the codex you can go, right, okay, so tell me about the mods and everything, and they will tell you how you can equip the mods in your different pieces of equipment, your different piece of gear. You can gain bonuses from doing so. If you put vitality on it, you'll increase your health of your Warframe. How the polarities matching reduces the cost by half, rounded up. And what was the mismatch increases the cost, or aura mods. Like, they explain nearly everything apart from mods that you won't see until much later on in the game, like Riven's primed mods, stuff that's only accessible through the login system. They don't explain any of that, and they don't explain how to rank it up.
So you said it's a diorama. Does that pop up when you like through the starter quest? Like you go to the mod system and it pops up, or do you have to go into the codex and then the codex shows that?
I'm very sure you have to go into the codex, or I'm very sure there's a tutorial button in the UI. So it's, oh god, no, I think it's in the Foundry. Yeah, sorry, not the Foundry, the mod terminal. You go into the mod terminal, and one of the buttons in the bottom is like tutorial,
All
and
right.
you can access it there, or you can access it in the codex. It's in the same place, and it's just got like this gating of accessibility that's just like, did you really think this through?
All right. So I see Cold Daylight saying yeah, as well. You have to go to the codex. To me, I've been playing Warframe for a long time, but to reference another game that I'm playing recently, and I think you've played as well, it's this mobile game called Epic 7. It's quite a fun game. And there's a lot to this game, into how you can build your characters, what kind of equipment you can throw on the characters. And there's a bunch of question marks everywhere you click. There's like a question mark and you can ask for help. I'm a player that doesn't do that because I don't like reading. I want to play. So I can understand very well that people don't read that people don't see that. If it's not shoved into their face, it's really hard to see. What I would love to see for a tutorial experience of mods, because I think that the mod system in Warframe is a really, really great thing as to how you can show your personality within the way that you build your frames, within the way that you like your playstyle. What I would love is for some basic things to be explained, which already you mentioned, where are explained is to how placing certain mods will give you half the cost or double the cost, how placing certain mods will give you vitality, will give you extra health, and I think there was another one. I don't know, but one of the things that you mentioned, I want to have added to that as well. Like, how do you rank them up? I think that this should be more of a guided experience. I have the Purgatory 2013 footage of Assassin's Creed right here. This is kind of what Warframe looked like back in the day. So I couldn't find the Warframe footage, but right here, this is kind of like you had this wide plays and things were kind of like rendered here. It will take Xeno a while until you see Xeno on stream, but I would like something like this, maybe in the Simulacrum. That would be a great thing to explain, though maybe not at the start. But I would like to see a place where it's like, hey, let's go into the mod system and then slap on the vitality. You have to put on the vitality yourself. It's like your health increases. Let's put on the damage mods. All right, let's put on 2 elemental mods, and then we have corrosive and fire that at the Grenier. A corrosive is very effective against the Grenier. Look at that. Now let's swap that around for magnetic. Fire that at the Corpus. That is effective. Let's try heat for the infested. I think that is mentioned in the second quest, which is Once Awake, where they actually give you a heat mod to fight the infested because heat is effective against the infested, which is a good thing. But it needs to be more hand guided, where it's like, okay, now here's some endo, rank up this mod. Because it took me a long time to understand which elements worked with which enemies, and like I kind of knew heat for infested, but the rest I didn't know. And I think status chance and crit chance, as easy as they are to me, I also remember the time that I didn't understand anything of it. I just threw on damage mods, even though it's very simple. It's if you have a high crit chance will give you the damage multiplier. If it's high, you build up for it. You can build up for it, which is pretty easy. You can also not do that, but most likely you'll do it. And status chance will allow you to proc, so if that's high, you can build up for that. And the more elements you put on, like the more procs you can get, and the different combinations will be more effective against certain enemies. Like that is valuable information, which you don't really get through reading that thing. So I think it should be more of a, instead of a reading text from a screen thing, should be more of a, you're kind of like do it, try it, because you learn from doing it.
So one thing you may not be aware of
Mm-hmm.
is that one of the junction requirements within the star chart require you to rank up a mod, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't tell you how to do it, right? And it's just like, okay, so that is an incentive to either go outside of Warframe to find the answer, or to flat out just give up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't think is the right course of action. If anything, Ordis should turn around and say, oh, you have to rank up this mod. Let me show you how. And sort of like edges you on to, oh god, the
process.
arsenal. Yeah, basically it takes you through the process of ranking up a mod, which I think is the best course of action. But right now, you got nothing. And like, I'm very sure that there are plenty of people out there that do not have the mentality to just go away and find out. They'd have more of a give up mentality, because they could be playing Nier Automata, they could be playing Mario Maker 2, they could be playing something that is more intuitive, because as everyone has basically said, Warframe has an extremely steep learning curve.
So I actually wanted to read some more prominent examples from chat, because there's one more that I want to add to that, which almost killed Warframe for me. I almost quit Warframe at Mastering 2 or 3. But let me read into chat as to what people are saying. So Studio Steve says, wikis are great for more in-depth info, metadata, drop chance, etc. The game needs more focus on introduction to the fundamentals of the game. Cold Daylight says, I don't do a lot of planes because all of the quests are somehow geared for squads, and I play a lot of solo. That is an interesting thing. I also want to talk about like, how is it for a solo player? Because regardless of whether you like playing solo or not, I found when I started on the Xbox One and the PS4, a lot of general nodes don't really have a lot of players active. So if you don't have friends, you'll find yourself playing alone by yourself quite a lot of times, especially with quests. A lot of times I have to do that solo unless I do them in stream, but not everyone has a stream. Cold Data says also explain mods, how to upgrade them. You have to go to the codex. Syndicates, Remy says, is what confused him the most. And yeah, I think that is like Syndicates, the mod system. So do you want to jump on the solo thing?
I'm happy to jump on the solo thing. The Syndicate's problem I don't truly understand. Maybe it was because I was eased into it so much, or maybe I was just too high at MR before I actually found it a problem.
I think the Syndicate's released while we were active with Warframe and we knew what was coming. I am with Xbox, and I'm with my Xbox and PS4 accounts. I haven't joined the Syndicate because there's not really given a reason to. It's not really told like, hey, look at all these guys, you can join them. You just have to like put it on a schedule and you'll gain experience for it. But there's nothing. I think that is the core. That's one of the core things. It's yes, you can find the information, but you really have to look for it. And I think that's part of the complexity of Warframe. Let me try and go down this road, because instead of looking at anecdotal evidence of where people found problems, let's see if we can see what the commonality is between them and where the core issues are. Because one of the things that I'm thinking about is with regards to a mod system, with regards to syndicates, where some people ease in and some people just don't. Yes, the info is around, but you have to dig a little bit. And it would be nice if things could be popped up to your face. It's like, well, today we're going to be looking for syndicates. So today we're going to talk about syndicates. So you go past them. You know, you have to go past them. You have to like walk past them. Just as I said with what I would love to see with the mods, it's like you have to pick up the mod, put it in there, pick up the crit mod so you can see the crit chance change. You're going to have to pick up your elemental mod so you can see the elements change and how they affect each other. But at the same time, Warframe is really, really complex, where like if you were to do that, I can also understand that, yeah, you'd be spending a day just being forced to go everywhere. And like if we look at the amps of the example of the casual player that's returning, the amps is such a small thing. If you think about that, you can only get it from the plains of Eidolon, and outside, like if you've never used the operator, which you don't need to use, it's a really nice thing, but you don't need to use them. Like we've played years without them. That it's one of the many things in Warframe which through the complexity people might miss, and then later on discover that they need it all of a sudden out of the blue when the game expects you to already know about them. So I think my point is that one of the main problems I see is the game's complexity in both the way of guiding players through each of the systems and having players be aware that these systems even exist and become somewhat proficient in them.
So one of the biggest things that I found amazing on the Warframe forums is players helping players.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's nothing, to write home about, but the fact that players can go on there and they can readily see, like, this is a list of the changes since the last. So they had this forum post which has the date when it happened, and then here's a small list of the changes, and then there's another date, and then a list of the changes. So you can actually backtrack and go, right, when did I last play, and see all the changes that you've done, so that you've experienced, right? Personally, I think Warframe could do with having that in-game. Yeah? So it's a simple case of, right, the game remembers this is when you last played, right? Because, Cypher doesn't truly remember when he last played. All we know is he never went to the plains. Yeah, so he could have quit months before that. We know it was sometime between the plains and I want to say the War Within. I think that's the right order.
War Within, then plains.
Yeah. So it was sometime between those two, but we don't know exactly when. So it'd be useful to actually, boot into the game, and for the first week, when you first log in, it tells you this is all the stuff that's changed. And then for the first week, there is like a button in the bottom right hand corner of your UI. Whenever you hit escape, it's like, the remember the changes, or these are the changes, or whatever. And then that way you can easily follow what's different. Yeah.
So let me see. I think I have 3 questions about that because
Mhm.
I think it could work. Number one would be, when would that kick in? Because if I don't log in for a day, would I see, well, you missed 2 hot fixes? I think that
I don't think you would.
that would miss it. Number two would be, how does that deal with the complexity of Warframe? Because if I don't log in for about 3 years, which is very well possible, you played it for 2 years, you come back after 3 years, your list is going to be immense. If it, like, either it's going to be compact, but that means that if I haven't played for like half a year, there would be nothing on it. Because if you want to make it really compact, then with the way that Warframe releases things, you're not going to have a lot on that list. But if it's going to be kind of like extensive, so that if you haven't played for half a year, it shows like there's this new game mode, there's this new boss, there's this new Warframe. I don't know what info is going to be put on there, but then your list will be very extensive. And then I think that's going to be less effective. I don't know, because if I were to log in, it's like it's an entire list because I haven't played for 3 years. I don't know whether that helps a lot with the complexity. And the third thing is, how hard would it be for DE to log the data for every individual player and keep track of that?
But you don't need to log the data for every individual player. You need to log the list of when a patch went out and what the small things are. But you will know when the player last logged in. That's all you have to do. You just compare point 1 to point 2. When did the thing go out? When did they last log in?
All right.
I think for some players it will certainly be helpful. I don't think it would be revolutionary. And I think a lot of players that may be up to scratch with watching content creators or what have you, they'll just close it and just go, oh, I'm just going to jump in and start playing it straight away. So I don't think it's for everyone, but I think it's certainly a solution for some people.
So, what kind of people would this be a solution for? Because
Okay, for example,
yeah.
Hearthstone have this, right? Whenever an update goes live, or whenever they change the statistics of a card, and you haven't logged in for a long time, you start it up, and it goes, right, these cards have been changed, yeah, and they actually list you out, and they highlight what's being changed, yeah. So that certainly does it. And yes, it's a lot more user friendly than the likes of, here's a bullet point list, right? You could simplify it. You could just say 132 new weapons have been added to the game, right? 12 new warframes have been added to the game. 3 of them are prime. Actually, that's kind of ambitious, but you get the point. You could dumb it down, right? So it's like easily more digestible, and then maybe you could click in and you could get like a breakdown of, these are the warframes that have been added. You can get them from these quests, or these are the weapons that have been added. You can get them from clan research, Barrow Katir, the relics, so on and so forth.
So,
if you want to go into that level of detail.
See, the question that I have, how many people do you think actively go to the codex to find information? Like a rough percent. How many like how many players would do that? Like, go to the codex and read through the information.
I think, I can't give you a percentage, but I'm pretty sure that out of the people that do not visit the wiki, I think I would estimate a third of those people would read the codex.
All right. So
the other 2/3 would either not bother looking or just learn as they play.
So That would be 2/3 of people that don't go into the codex. Of
That's
those,
my
yeah, yeah, yeah.
estimate.
Well, let's take that as like a as like an estimate because we can't really know these numbers. But I think I would kind of agree with you. I think that there is a group of players that really will read into things, but there's also a really large group of players that are casual players that are like
Yeah.
me. When I open up another game, it's like I'll just play. I'll figure it out as I go along. So when you're introducing this feature where it's like you have this list of all the things that have been added and you can make it as compact or detailed as you want, would like what majority of players would be interested in that? Like we have these two groups, people that read the codex and like go in depth on it, and we have the people that are just casual players that just play as they go. Would like okay, so like the thing that I'm thinking about, that like the point that I'm trying to get at is that I believe that players that will read the codex and will look for information, those are the players that will actually read that thing, but they would already go out and find that information. And players that are very casual and players that are like, I'll figure it out as I go along, that don't read the codex, that need that information for when they run into a sacrifice and all of a sudden, oh shit, I need an amp. I don't know what an amp is. And they're not even good at the amp because they've never used it. Those players will click that thing away.
So I think it's not so much a case of um, new players, old players, returning players, who uses what information. I think there's actually a YouTube original series that made a joke at this. The series is called Good Game, and I do heavily recommend people at least go watch the first episode and maybe consider spending a few pounds or dollars or whatever to go watch the rest of it. It stars the Game Grumps. Drew likes the Game Grumps.
Ooh.
Anyway, but the series is called Good Game, and in the first few minutes of the series, it talks about tournament level, esports level playing of a MOBA that's made up for the series, and they talk about there being gamers and then there being players, right? Gamers game, players play. If we catch you playing, you're out, But the whole point was that gamers are they're the sort of people that manage, sorry, not micromanage, min max, that's the word I was. They min max, they look for the best numbers, they look for they have a very strong sense of how to play anything because they have years and years of playing any other game. Like, first person shooters, I know how to play first person shooters. I'm expecting there to be a reload button, I'm expecting there to be a crouch button, I'm expecting there to be a jump button, right? I'm expecting to be able to look around with my mouse, expecting to be able to look down the iron sights with my right mouse button. I'm expecting, because I have so much experience built up behind it. But then there are plenty of players out there that don't have that level of experience with a variety of games. And, though they have very keen interest in whatever they're playing, for example, maybe they have keen interest in Warframe, but they don't have third person shooter experience, they might turn around and find a resource like what I'm proposing, this update checklist, this update board post or whatever, to be very useful. But I think for gamers like myself, and certainly yourself and probably the majority of the audience, they wouldn't find it useful because they have this keen sense of just being able to pick up and play. But for players like Cypher Invictus and my other friends, Cthulhu, they aren't. I hate to say this, they aren't gamers, they are players.
So actually, like, this is the thing that I'm kind of worried about, because I think that what you're proposing would be really good for returning gamers and not good for returning players. Because if I'm a gamer, going by the definition of a gamer, someone that will dive into the game and try to min max things and try to, like, with their experience be the best that they are. If I return to a game after a long time as a gamer, I want to know what changed. I want to know what's been added. I want to know whether there are new systems. I want to know whether there's a new focus system, a new amp. Like, I'd be really interested if I log in and be like, oh my god, there's a list. New mods have been added. What kind of mods have been added? What kind of things have been added? I'd be really interested in that. But if I am a player, and there is different gradations within players. If we go with players that are just like that are not the gamer type but the player type, not in that you're not a gamer, but just like the way that you play, like going by the definition that we established as gamer and player. There's different gradations within players, but I can very well understand, as we talked about last week with the end game discussions, about the quick rewards that younger generations are looking for, and especially like the more prevalent mobile games, that there's a, well, I don't want to throw out numbers, but there is a certain amount of players that won't even be interested because in like reading a list, because they'll just skip past it because they don't know what it means. If you say mods have been added, they might not know what it means. They will not go into it. I think that it's more a gamer thing to be looking for a list like that and be captivated by it and find that useful. Because if I'm just taking this as like a game that I have on my mobile and just like I tap away and like I pick up Call of Duty and I just grab my controller and I shoot because I don't need to know two buttons and like my control sticks, and if I then go to Warframe and they say amps have been added, then I'm like, I don't know what that word means. Skip.
So this is where I would argue against that, right? I think a gamer wouldn't bother looking for that information within game because they already know that they're not going to get the detail they want. They want to know what are the IPS values of the new guns that have come in. They want to know a comparison between these weapons. They're not going to get that in the game. They're going to get that from the wiki. And I don't even think for a second a returning gamer would even bother looking at the internal systems of what DE will put into Warframe, only because they know that there are external resources that are even better. I mean, same with mobile game. I don't even bother looking at the in-game help. I just look it up on a wiki or on a Reddit, right? Same with, God, like I'm trying to look up. I've been programmed not to bother trying to find the solution in the game, but to find a solution out of the game, because I can ask the game itself, game, how do I equip an amp? Oh, well, you see, you must go through this long quest of Reddit, how do I equip an amp? Go to here. You know, it's so much faster.
So I was gonna ask you, like, would you look up the list of things, what changed in the meantime outside, but actually, like, you answered that question at the start of the podcast about like the helping players list, like what did I miss? Yeah. So that is there, but I would consider myself more on the gamer end than the player end because I do like to dive into deep mechanics. However, like, interesting enough, I will reference the Epic 7 game again because this is a game that I played pretty seriously around the New Year's and then dropped because it was taking so much time. And then last week someone mentioned it and I was like, well, let me update it again, let me see what it is, and a lot has changed. However, that is a game that I didn't care about for months because I just put it down and now come back and I'm like, okay, what has changed? I don't know. However, I will not go over the Reddit of the thing. I will not go over like the webpage of that thing because I don't really have the time to bother with that. Like, if it's in the game, I want to like see what the game mechanics are about, and if there's a game mechanic that I don't understand, I will look that up. But I don't know whether there's such a resource exists for it. Maybe it does, but I will have to look for it, which will take me like time, and I don't have that time, even though I do want to find that information. So I think I'm probably more I'm more a gamer player than a gamer, and yeah, like gamer player being like a gamer who is more like, yeah, we're getting into like weird categories, but
I just want to say, even though like this might sound a bit counterintuitive, first off, right, there's nothing wrong with being either a gamer or a player.
Mm-hmm.
right? I hate the fact that the only way to really describe this is some weird nuanced thing that's just like, hey, look, tiny minor distinction. But
Well,
it's more.
the
Go
definition
on.
works because either like in the idea in the word gamer, it's like you're gaming the system, so you're using the loopholes that other people might not know about, so you're gaming the system. If you are a player, you're playing the game, and if you're playing the game, you play along with the rules. You play as though as it is intended, so they work, and I think that they both
Yes.
work. Yeah, I think they're actually pretty applicable. It's just that we associate gamer more as like everyone is a gamer because they game, and then at the same time we also use players. So I don't. Yeah, it's you
I'd
gotta.
also like take a pot shot at myself here and say that you have players and then you have no lifers, right? I'm
Yeah.
totally a no lifer, right?
See,
So yeah.
like this is the thing. I would have loved actually to have a guest on that is not as no live Warframe as we are, because the fact that I will wiki the trivia up for things on in Warframe to find minute details. It has something to do with the videos, but like that is an insane amount of detail that I go into Warframe for. I don't do that with every game. So maybe if we link it to another game, but we're focusing on Warframe's experience of that. But yeah, like I think we're both no lifers in that sense about Warframe.
Exactly. So, right, okay. I want to take this on a little bit of a tangent. Let's talk about the. So I think we just spent a long while on the returning player experience. Let's talk about what happens after Vor's Prize,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this is quite a bone of contention. With Vor's Prize, you've gone from Earth, where you've started, all the way through Venus, all the way through Mercury, killed him, and you've basically got access to the first 3 planets. Oh god, can I just give you random tidbit of advice, right? When you have a shower, don't inhale the soap. My nose is going nuts, and it's like you probably see me touch my nose constantly this entire thing. I'm sorry, I'm not doing it on purpose. My nose is really itchy because of it. Sorry, I'm just like really mentally aware that I'm doing it, and it's driving me up the wall.
Don't worry.
So
At least
yeah,
soap is a legally white substance that you can sniff up. It's not recommended, but since it's
it's
legal.
not recommended at all. Oh my god! Oh, this is driving me up the wall. Sorry, don't inhale the soap, guys. Don't inhale the soap. Right. So what was I saying? I can't remember. I've been thrown off by the nose itching. What was I saying, Michelle?
I'm just thinking.
Oh yeah, Force price.
Yeah, force price. What happens after force price?
I can do this. I believe in
You can
myself.
do it.
I know I'll do it. I'll snort this Pepsi Max now.
Yeah. So force prize. What happens after force prize? You've unlocked
After
the
force
first
prize.
Yeah.
You've unlocked the first 3 planets. You then have access to all of Earth, right? Because it's railroaded you to begin with. You can then go to the plains of Eidolon, but there's no incentive to do anything. And I personally feel this is a huge fumble on DE's part. There's no ultimate goal, right, of what you should do. A new player completed Force Prize, they don't even know the second dream exists. I assume that the entire audience here have all played the second dream and the War Within and the Sacrifice and everything else, right? But go on.
I think you raised something really, really interesting, because the way that I remember Warframe when I started was
just to point out, Cold Daylight has turned around and said that they've not done everything.
They really just started, which is really, really cool. So, but what was I saying? Okay, so when I started, the idea of Warframe, there were no quests, there were no lines. It was just do missions. Do missions, acquire everything. So I think that there's a part of the Warframe player base, and part of Warframe's history was through that. However, we now have very interesting quests, but there's no narrative to it, and the only narrative we're given, and this is where I think that Force Prize is a weird quest, is that you start off and you have a pretty solid narrative with you being waking up because Captain Four is about to capture you, and then you go and then you escape, and then you have to acquire weapons, you have to acquire some resources, and then you have to take off the thing that he put on you, and then you have to kill him. And I think that's a bad thing. You shouldn't have to kill Four, because basically the narrative that you're being given is, alright, so you're a Tenno, who's a pretty good warrior, but you've been asleep, and you're woken up because Four is like this one hostile thing is trying to capture you and do weird things with you. Kinky things with you. And yeah. And then you have this narrative where like, okay, you've woken up, your primary goal is to survive, so you survive and you get rid of him. You get rid of him, and then the arc is done. Then the story is done. Then there is no narrative reason as to why you should go on and why you should care about anything. And this is one of the things that I criticized the planes for when it came out, is there's no narrative reason to go to the planes. You just have to stumble upon it. So I think that that's a really good thing. What you mentioned is that like Force Prize ends. I think that's a bad thing. Force Prize should not end, because where you go?
No, it's worse than that. So personally, if I could change it, I would make it so that you finish Vor's Prize and then Lotus turns around and says, I'm receiving a strange signal from, I want to say Uranus, which I think is where you get the...
Yeah, that's the sentience.
Is that where you get the second dream from?
The second dream where you can scan the sentience. I would even say, like, go and incentivize the players to go to a node and then do once awake. Like, incentivize them to like, I'm getting something from here, or be like, we've discovered this location on Earth where we have people go there and find out. Like, yes, kind of hint at Uranus, but that's a long way away. Like, seriously, that's a long way away. And if the Lotus mentions once, like, you're gonna forget about it. So I would rather say like, move people to move between quests, because like then they kind of learn that, hey, you know, there's a quest build up. There is some quests in this game that I can actually play. There's a narrative structure. Because great example, Destiny. I am not a no-lifer in Destiny. So the way that I played Destiny was, I would go in and I would just follow where the thing went. Where the quest icon was, I would go there. And I would go wherever it said it would go. And it would unlock the planets for me. And I would just follow it along. And sometimes I would go out and do the side quests. But I would just follow it along. In Warframe, you're entirely having to look to create that thing. Like, you don't know where it is. And yes, it might be in Uranus. It's in Uranus. It's in Uranus. If you scan a drone, then it will pop up. It's like, well, how do you figure that out? How am I supposed to know that? You don't. And that is kind of like, the second dream is the very first time that there's actually an indication of, hey, there's a story here. There's a story here. But that's not like there's no continuation on there. And I saw someone say in chat, Nasud says, if you know what you're doing, you can knock out all the quests before MR8. If you have no idea what you're doing, you might not even realize that leveling up weapons is how you get mastery, as a friend of mine admitted. 100% true. And like, one of the things that I wanted to point out with that is that, if you know what you're doing, you will go to Uranus, or whatever planet you want to go to. But I can also understand, because I might have done this, is that you're like, ooh, I found a survival mission. Let me do this 10 times to see whatever drops from here. Yeah. And you're going to spend a lot of time there.
So I think with very minimal effort, they could weave the narrative ever so slightly. So maybe after Vor's Prize, you could have it that Lek Krill turns up, does some gargling at you. It translates to something like, you know, Vor will be avenged or something like that. And then after you fought Lek Krill or something, he turns around and says, you know, we've reconstructed Vor, or you know, the newly cloned Vor, or something like, you know. And again, like you could, with just some minor dialogue additions, really usher the player on with the narrative. One of the biggest problems with the planes, so I don't know if you're aware of this. You keep looking at chat. Is there something that you want to jump on?
I just want to say F to Cag, who tried to improve Omega Weapon with "prove me wrong," but then spelled it wrong, just as Omega
Fair
Weapon
enough.
did. So I just have to post an F in there. Yeah.
So one of the biggest problems with the planes of Eidolon is the fact that they lined it up that you have to go to the planes before you can go to Mars, right? So this gives a horrible misconception of what the planes is. Yeah, you get to the planes, you go there, and then you're like, oh, this is the rest of Warframe. I am home. I have arrived in Liberty City. And not realizing that there's a whole rest of a star chart behind the planes. And I get it. They really wanted to push players to experience the planes for themselves, really hype it up and everything, the whole marketing thing. I totally get it. I really get it. But the execution for new players was horrifically flawed. I don't know if you realize this. They changed Sire's Vigil. Did I feel
Yeah,
I mentioned this
you
before.
mentioned this last week that Size Vigil was first the quest that you used to get into the planes. You had to do that, and then you could do bounties, and now you can do them aside because otherwise people wouldn't be able to do the bounties. But I agree. I think the execution of the planes was absolutely horrible. And you mentioned for the hype and for people to get into it. Even so, I think that one of the main problems with that is that you have to you enter, you just have to click on the node, and then all of a sudden it's like this intro thing. It would have been so much better for returning players, for the building of the universe, for new players, if right after Force Prize there would be orders saying, or the Lotus, or the orders coming around saying, we've picked up something strange from Earth. We got to investigate. And then you do this mission on Earth, and then maybe your Grineer, you have to get on a Grineer dropship or whatever. You get on it, like it crashes down, and it's like, wait, Tenno, where are you? Where did you go? Oh my God, what is this? And you walk in, it's like, oh my God, this is Cetus. We didn't know that this was here. It feels way more meaningful when it's like established that the norm is there is a normal mission, but this is like a special. This is like no one knew that this was here, and boom, here it is. Oh my. But they didn't do it. It's just like a note there. And I can very well understand, because the Plains Final is a small progression world of its own. And then you have Fortuna, which is also a small progression world of its own. Because you will see as a new player that like the bounties go up, and you'll see players that are really high mastery rank there. So it's like, well, most likely this is where I rank up. There's a longer start to it. And I actually think that we've touched on a very important point, because at the start I thought that it had to do a lot with the complexity of the game, which was the problem. And I think that there is still like it's a struggle to go around how do you handle the complexity of a game this big, and how do you make sure that people get used to things. And I was kind of held back with, well, shoving it all in their face like a bit much. But I think that slowly introducing things over time, like what we said with have them be notified of quests, or have them be notified of a Plains of Eidolon kind of at this like before you actually find it, so that they have an idea as to what's coming up. Give them an idea of what quest is coming up. And for casual returning players, give them an idea that an amp is coming up way before they have to use it in the sacrifice, or give people an idea that they have to use Darkwing way before you have to do that stupid Jordis assassination where you have to use an Arcwing that's somewhat decent in killing something. It's like, I think that run up thing is something that, with all these systems that are problematic, mods, quests, planes, and weird assassination missions with Arcwing, is missing, because you're given very little clues about the game that you need it, and then all of a sudden it goes from 0 to 100. And then you need it.
I think the game is done better in the sense that it forces you to learn about these things with the junctions. You know, in order to get past, can't, I think it's Mars. In order to get past Mars, you have to have built your Archwing, right? Because I think it requires you to do some Archwing missions.
Mm-hmm.
And though that is good, at the same time, it's not enough of an incentive like to learn about these things because okay, yeah, we know about the different features and things, or we can learn about the different features, but there's no goal. There's no loot cave at the end of the tunnel. There's no bat symbol in the sky. We don't know why we're filling out this star chart, and it's only really the community being absolutely amazing that we even know go do the second dream. What's the second dream? We're not telling you, just go do it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't for the fact that the community drives new players to go do these amazing things towards the end of the star chart, I think Warframe would not have as many new players as it does now.
So, speaking of the community, how much of a help do you think that the now discontinued Guide of the Lotus program was to the Warframe new player experience or returning player experience? Because uh, without a doubt, casual new players that return most likely use that as well.
So I'm just replying to Velcio. Um,
All right, so basically, the Guide of the Lotus program, for those of you who might not be familiar with it, it's discontinued now, but it used to be a bunch of volunteers of more experienced Warframe players that would be picked out by DE to sit in relays. And then when people would come into relays or be in region chat and they post up a question, they would they would answer that question and give them guidance as to when Barricade was coming, as to whatever they were asking, and they would help players until they no longer needed help.
so I don't feel I can readily talk about guides of this, only because they were introduced into the game much later than I needed them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And because of which it feels really I don't know, like, did they do a good job? Did they do a bad job? There was a crap ton of controversy behind them, don't get me wrong. I think that a few bad apples spoiled the bunch. And I certainly think that some content creators could have done their best to be a little more tactful on how they presented the situation and even get their facts right. But, some content creators decided to, pardon my language, shit all over it and make out like a bandit.
But did you think that there, in the concept of it, was an inherent worth for the game that could have solved, or no, actually not solved, but be a temporary fix for the problem that we have right now? Because how you mentioned that the way that new players actually get into the game is because of the community push.
I personally feel that its execution was flawed not because of the people they had, but how it was implemented. Having physical players in one small section of the game was not the best way of doing it. If anyone knows me, they know that I've played a truck ton of World of Warcraft, and how that did it was you hit escape or you clicked on the computer icon in your action bar. You go to the help button, and it would bring up a glorified web form where you filled in. Well, you try and find the problem. You then filled in the details, and then it would send off a message to Blizzard's in-game tech support or chat support, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then you end up having a conversation with someone from Blizzard, a representative from Blizzard, who would help you through their problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, they would help you through your problems. So, case in point, Loz ended up doing something that got him out of phase, out of World of Warcraft, and he couldn't see any NPCs, he couldn't see any enemies or anything like this. And he reached out to them and said, like, "Oh yeah, in order to do this, to get fixed, you have to go to this location and talk to the quest giver, blah 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 blah." And he had to walk there. Like it took him, oh god, 2 hours to actually walk there
Jeez.
because the game, like, it just completely bugged out. He couldn't mount, he couldn't, so he did that. He got there, and lo and behold, the character was out of phase with him as well. So he couldn't actually do it. He was stuck. So he messaged the person back and said, like, nope, no good, I can't do it. And then the person basically said, right, log off. We'll message you in the Blizzard Battle.net client, which I've already shown.
Mm-hmm.
I can't
Yeah.
remember when I showed it, but and like basically the guy had to reset Loz back into the normal world. He had to go into the database and edit it and so on and so forth. And then after like, I think it was, I don't know, it was like 30 minutes, I think. Loz got a message back saying, right, you're now safe to come back into World of Warcraft. And then Bob's your uncle. But the point was, he was talking to them in game. If I was Digital Extremes, I would have mimicked the same service. I would have gone, okay, I need help. I don't know what I'm doing, what have you. This could be a community-driven thing. And literally, when a request has been put through, a ticket pops up, so like a dialogue window pops up, and then you can start messaging them. You can have a dialogue and everything. But this could be done mid-mission. This could be done in the Lisette. It could be done in Relay. It could be done,
Mm-hmm.
anywhere in-game. And that's one of the big things. If people want help in a game, and they don't know what they're doing, they're not going to know that they have to go to one specific location in all of the star chart to get that help.
Mm-hmm.
I think I hit the
So,
nail on the head with
yeah.
that.
Yeah, no, like, that is. It's a way better system. That's like
Mm-hmm.
being able to like hit it up wherever, and even like the Battle.net client that you can go out the game and still be in contact. That's a great system too. And
Yep.
a chat like system, because I assume it was more like a chat like system via the Battle.net launcher. I think that's also way better than having support tickets and going around with emails, which take a long time.
Yeah.
But that brings me to the question, and I think that this is also a fundamental question about the entire topic that we're talking about. But how is it important enough, or how important is it to like the to be new player or casual player friendly for Digital Extremes to create a team like this, or to fix up an experience like this? Because yes, you could have that be man 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Like World of Warcraft may or may not have had it, but most likely you'd want that, so that any player that will hit up help will get help within a reasonable span of time. So you would have to deploy a large amount of manpower. Like, not insane, but you'd need a bunch of people if we have 50 million players, which would be like a lot of investment into just helping out players, not developing new things, not creating strategies, not moving the game forward, but just sustaining the player base that is asking questions. So it's a huge investment, and we've been talking about this for about an hour about the new player, returning player experience. So, how important is it actually? Is it is it that important that it warrants it?
Oh, why you ask such a difficult question, man? Right. I think it is quite important. A lot of people argue that Endgame needs a lot of TLC, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want Endgame to have TLC. I want, if you've watched this before, you know I'm an advocate for, a carrot at the end of 16 waves of ESO.
Hmm.
Everyone knows I want a goal to strive towards. Even if I fall, I want to be able to try again and try again and try again. Because if I have all the carrots, the sticks are meaningless to me, right?
Hmm.
So, but, and I hate to say this, I love you all, right? Cold daylight, right? You're not in this list because you are a newer player. You're still playing the game, pre the sacrifice, pre all this cool stuff. I love you all, but we are a minority, right? We are a vocal minority. There's nothing wrong with that. But the majority of the player base is not MR27 or even 25 or even the majority of the player base is in the tens, right? Because a lot of the players, they start playing, they find the grind, and then they either pay up or they stop. So you need to incentivize them. Arcwing, right? Railjack, Plains of Eidolon, the other one I can't remember the name of, or Valis Fortuna, right? The sacrifice, the second dream, the war within, that was for us. That was amazing stuff for us. And we got rewarded. Yeah. We got rewarded for the patience that we waited to get this glorious endgame stuff. But our endgame keeps moving, right? Eidolons, that was for us, right? Rapa Dopa Lopa list, the Ropa
Hmm.
Dopa list, right? That I'd actually argue is more for the new player, even though it's gated behind the Chimera prologue. Yeah? There are so many systems within the game that are targeted to new and mid-level players rather than endgame players. And I have zero issue with this. I think it's important, but I still have my desires.
So when you're talking about the majority of players is with it is towards that mastering 10 range, which I like. I don't have the statistics, but it's very, very believable because there's only a few players that really push forward to the mastering 27s. We've talked a lot about the new player stuff, like the new player experience, the tutorial experience, the understanding experience of mods, of quests, of moving beyond Earth. Is it, if we're talking about this group of casual and returning players, there is a difference between solely new player content and general general learning content in the sense of having a better help system, having a better codex. Do you think it's very do you think there's a lot of worth in just focusing on new players, on having the quests that link to each other, in having the mod system be pop-ups that are very directly explained? Or should the focus be more towards general things that can help out also casual players that are mastering 10? Because I think there's a distinct difference between a returning player of mastering 8 or your friend Cypher and someone who just started the game. And helping someone who just started the game might very well not help Cypher at all because he doesn't do the new Force Price quest.
Why you make this hard? um it's it's a bit mental because I do think that there are some things they could change towards making the new player experience better. Have they changed anything for the new player experience in a while? No, not at all. We had Vor's Prize, and then they've barely
Mm-hmm.
made any additions, right? We don't need players to be flooded with messages on the star chart. Hey, the oh god, the acolytes are available, or they don't need to like. I saw Steve's streams from when he was streaming. What was it, like a year ago, maybe 2 years ago? He highlighted some really key concerns for the new player experience. We've highlighted some here. I think now is the time to adjust the new player experience to accommodate them. Because, hell, I remember the relatively scathing review from PC Gamer about Fortuna. They sang praises of the Plains of Eidolon, but they wrote quite a scathing review with regards to Fortuna, and it's pretty much the same content.
Well, that might be the problem of itself, because I thought Fortuna, going quickly on the Fortuna thing, I thought Fortuna was what I expected Plains of Eidolon to be. It was a better version of the Plains of Eidolon. However, you cannot make something better, just take Plains of Eidolon, make it better, and then expect the same praise, because Plains of Eidolon was something new, completely new. I want to know... Yeah, go ahead.
I don't mean to jump on this, but I feel it needs to. The shocking thing to me is that the criticisms that they were throwing at Digital Extremes for the Fortuna release was along the lines of they have gated access to Gara, right? They gated access to Garuda, which was worse because you had to go out and get resources from the rest of the star chart, right?
I think you're mixing them up, because Garuda are like their criticisms of Fortuna were
the criticisms are of Fortuna
that Garuda was too hard to get.
Yes, right. Yeah. But you Gara had the same. Worse. Gara was worse.
Yeah, you mix them up,
right?
Okay, yeah.
But it's like, so getting Gara's resources in the rest of Star Chart, people didn't know how to do that, but they sung praises about how amazing Plains of Eidolon was, because it was revolutionary. So it highlights that PC Gamer only looked at the bare skin of Plains of Eidolon, not looking at the nitty-gritty part of it. And then it wasn't until they saw, that here's the stuff that the nitty-gritty that we looked at before, and there's some extra layers of icing on this. That icing is behind not a paywall, a gated time wall. That's not fair. And it was only until that sort of stuff happened that they started to write this scathing review, which is not fair. You can't say one thing is worse than the other when they're exactly the same. Or in some cases, Fortuna is better than the bloody Plains of Eidolon.
Well, I wonder a little bit about that, because I agree if they're the same thing, and if the one is better than the other, then you would expect the same thing, the same praise. At the same time, let's say that a hypothetical revolutionary phone company were to release a new phone, which is a brand new design and a brand new model, then that phone would get a lot of praise. Let's say that this hypothetical company would come around the next year on their keynote event, and then would release a new phone, which is just the exact same phone with a few updated specs and an S to the name. Then, well, sometimes the reviews are the same, but a lot of critical people will be, well, it's not really like the same stuff.
It's not better.
It's not better. It's kind of the same with a little improvement. So I can see that. And what I wonder about is, yes, we are the no-livers in Warframe, so we'll say that, well, did you see about the spiders? Did you see about if you go around you can scan things and then that makes a story? But is that what PC gamers should be looking at? Because where is kind of the breaking point where you need to focus everything on? Where should players like the majority of the player base be piqued in their interest so they go on? And this is also a general question about the rest of Warframe, going back to like the new player, like improving the new player to like MR10 experience, where should the focus be on? Should it be on what Pixel mentioned, the new player quest rework? Is that the pivoting point where people are like, oh well, this sucks, let me quit the game, or I don't understand anything, let me quit the game? Is that when they're like when they're done with it and then they need to go on? Is that the pivoting point? Is that the most important point? Or should we look for, well, maybe when they rank up their first Warframe? Or one of my concerns, like one of the things that I almost quit Warframe over, was when I got 2 Warframes and I wanted to get a third, and I saw it was slots and I had to buy platinum, and I was like, oh, so it's a paid game, which it wasn't. I figured out for trading, but that was for me almost a pivoting point. So where is the most important point? What is like the most important point where the focus should be on to keep as many players as possible interested in the game? I don't think it's necessarily at the very start of the game, but I think that you can kind of screw up in your opening quest because people will cut you some slack. But I don't think it's towards mastering 10, because that's a big difference. So where should it be that you can help the most players and should like help them out and improve the most?
If you had to choose somewhere, like I know where I would choose it, but if you had to choose somewhere to be the best place to help out players, right? You could be as vague as just where would you choose?
I would choose when they rank up their first Warframe and gear set, when they get to rank 30 with their first loadout, because I can understand, regardless of whether I understand the game at all, the enemy scale rather well. Even if you don't put mods on your gear, you can still kill enemies, and will gradually become harder, and you will see your levels go up, and that makes sense. But when they hit rank 30, you're like, what do we do now? And I think that even without the quest telling you that a new quest is coming, I think that is like, I can still rank up those levels, but once the levels hit 30 and I can't move on, I think that's a really important moment to like let me know that there is more.
So, from the sounds of it, you would want, I want to say effectively the Microsoft paperclip to highlight to you, you can do this, you can do that, when at the appropriate time, right? Or in this case, it would just be orders. Personally, I would rather ease people from Vor's Prize into doing something else, because right now, there is nothing. As soon as you finish Vor's Prize, deadpan stop. What the F are you supposed to do? Right? You've got no idea. Yeah? And that is a huge...
I agree.
I suppose disencouragement from actually continuing.
It is. Once Force Prize ends, like we talked about at the start, it just kills it. Like, you've done your narrative. Where do you go? And I think that's an important point that should be improved. However, I think that if you change Force Prize, you only change it for the players that aren't yet playing. And
I don't mean to change Vor's Prize. Vor's Prize as it is fine, right? It's just after Vor's Prize, when you finish Vor's Prize,
even if you finish Force Prize at like the end of it, it's only for it's only for the players that aren't playing yet, or the players that are now in the middle of Force Prize and decide to like quit the game halfway, and then we throw in the patch. So that means that we're only targeting this Master Rank 0 range, and we have the Master Rank 1 to 9 that are still affected by this problem of Warframe, of this new player casual experience, for which we won't fix anything. And it's like, I'm not saying that we should not fix Force Prize, but where is the most important thing? And I think that having something, well, you brought up the Clippy idea as orders, but even like I wasn't necessarily thinking about that, but even something like that, if that would be in there once you reach a certain point in the game, then that might be helpful and accessible to players. Like, actually, there we go, Epic 7 again. I have never talked about this game so much, but what that game just put in the patch when I was gone. And now there is this Nightwave system, in a sense, where you get rewards and there are tasks to do. So it's like there's like a little navigation thing that will go you around everything. It's like, do this mission, then rank up this hero, then equip a piece of equipment, then rank up the piece of equipment, do this mission. And it doesn't matter where you are in the game. Like, I was already like rather ahead in the game, but I still got those things and I could do them and I would get rewards out of them. The rewards were pretty nice and I actually went ahead and did that. And yes, that is then targeted on that range of players that are just finishing the game. No, just starting the game. Finishing is an entirely different thing. But it also helps the majority of the players that is struggling between mastering, well, 1 and 10. That range. And that's something that I'm a little bit, yeah, like, I agree. But I don't know whether that's the most important point.
No, I concur. I do think that there needs to be some changes on how stuff is handled. I think maybe subtler changes, like the proposed list, like the clippy version of Ordis where he jumps in and explains things, like, hey, look, there's a quest over there, go do it. I think maybe perhaps things I have high hopes for Railjack to be a system that truly incentivizes players across the entire spectrum, from starting to MR27, to really be able to jump into the game and get a lot more of experience. Because I'm honestly concerned. I'm genuinely worried about how many people can be on a Railjack. Is a Railjack just a glorified Lisette, right? You know, I don't know how they're planning on doing the integration. All I've heard are these stories of Steve in a park wearing a straw hat and a flute, basically saying that he wants to make the immersion so that there is no loading screens. And I totally get that. That's cool. That is super duper cool. But at the same time, is it going to be done right?
So, one of my main concerns with Railjack is you were mentioning, saying that I hope that Railjack delivers something across all the bases for new players to endgame players. I'm really wondering whether that is something that's even possible. Because over the last 2 years, we've seen Plains of Eidolon and Fortuna, and I feel that both of them tried to do that same thing. Offer something for new players and offer something for endgame players. And what I think that the result of that is that, in my anecdotal experience, so take that with a grain of salt, is that the endgame players that I've spoken to, they feel it's new player content. They're like, well, it's not hard, but I just run through it. Within a week, I'm done. Yeah, I don't really know. Maybe funny to hunt, but it's not impactful. I still feel left out. I still feel they don't really care about endgame players. And then new players are still stuck in the dark. How do I get to use my arc ring in Plains of Eidolon? Nobody knows. Fortuna. One of the interesting things about Fortuna, Jin the Saiyan, who plays on Xbox, came to PC, and he can't finish the Fortuna quest, the start quest, because number one, it's a solo quest, and it gets a little bit tough. And if you only have the broken mods, you're gonna kind of have to rank up both things. Like you have to rank up your gear and have some mods in order to do that first quest, and otherwise you can't go into Fortuna. So it's not good for new players. It's not great. It's not great for new players. It's not great for endgame players. And what you see then is that 2 years in a row you have this thing which is for across the board, where even though they try to serve everyone, it's kind of okay, even though they put a lot of work into it. So I'm really worried if Railjack is gonna be made under the same idea. Yes, I would love it to be concerning everything, but like there's not been a really great track record. And how will they be able to do that? How will they be able to make something really gripping that is a great new player experience, but also a great endgame player experience? I don't know.
Did you just put the camera back on me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now I have to say stuff, right?
Should I say stuff? I mean,
No, it's fine. Sorry. So if had this been 5 to 10 years ago, if someone was to ask me how could they do so, what company in game devs could actually do this? Who could pull it off? I would have said Blizzard.
mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, there's the bitterness in me. Blizzard has gone the way of the dodo. If anyone was to ask me what company could do it today, I honestly think it's Digital Extremes. They are more considerate towards producing a piece of art than, pushing out the next Call of Duty. They want to make sure that what the players get in their hands is an enjoyable, viable gameplay experience, right? I think this is the whole reason why we haven't had the Kingpin system, because they had a design, they built it, they tried it, they didn't like it, they didn't release it. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So I have faith that D have been working at Railjack since Steve came up with the concept. Like, I think, God, I feel he came up with the concept back in 2016. Was that when Planes of Eidolon was announced, wasn't it?
2017, I think. 2016 was the very first TennoCon, and we had the War Within, and then 2017 was the announcement of the Planes of Eidolon.
Yeah, but no, I think 2016 was the announcement of Planes of Eidolon.
No. 2016 was the announcement of the War.
It was.
No, it wasn't, because I went... hold up.
Dude,
I can prove this. I can prove this.
We're gonna look this up.
All right.
Look this up.
So my very first TennoCon was 2017. Let's say my very first TennoCon was the TennoCon where Planes of Eidolon was announced. So, if I have my card here, let's see.
You literally just said that. It was 2016.
2017. This was my very first TennoCon. I've only been to 2 TennoCons. My very first TennoCon was 2017. That's my very first one.
So what did they announce in
War Within?
2016?
War Within.
They didn't announce War Within in 2016 because they announced War Within at the beginning of January that year. What was the big announcement?
I don't know. You were there. That was their very first TennoCon. That's a mess here.
So they released Planes of Eidolon in 4 months after announcement.
Yeah.
I really don't think so.
No, they did, because they had a playable demo. It was announced in July and they released in November. And the same thing they did with Fortuna.
October.
They announced it. It was released in October. It was announced in July. It was released in October, and then Fortuna was announced in July and released in November. That's how it went. It definitely was the War Within on 2016. Because I remember being there when they announced Planes of Eidolon, and no one knew what it was.
TennoCon 2017. No, 16. Was it just a generic thing? I can't remember, man. I really can't remember. I could have sworn they announced it on 2016.
Yeah, I have it here. So remember, like when we talked about the thing, the Dev Stream overhyping stream, I made this list of from the September 2016 what they did. So then we have 10 Live on the 8th of July of 2017, Deathstream 95 that was.
Hmm.
Cetus plus Planes of Eidolon, Hydroid Prime, and Sacrifice. That was on.
So what was that?
So
What
on
date was that?
that was 8th of July 2017. So that was 10 Live. They
So
announced
what did they announce? 2016.
Cetus and the plane. I don't have 2016 here. Let me go open.
Okay.
TennoCon
It was the
2016.
War Within teaser. Yeah, it was literally just the War Within teaser.
Here, news. TennoCon 2016. They did a Q&A, I think, at that time.
Yeah, so it was Nova Deluxe, Necros Prime, Tigris Prime, Galaxian Prime, Titania, the 100 Days of Warframe mashed animation, and the War Within teaser. That's all they did. Yep, you're right. I'm wrong. So what was I saying? Words.
Yeah. So anyway, we're gonna have to see.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Yeah. Sorry. The whole point was that Steve was working. Yeah, this is what the point got to. Steve was working on the flying stuff since 2017, the ship stuff, because he was experimenting with it on a live stream, actually going into like a ship and then going out of it and piloting the ship and then going back into it. And he was playing around with this. So Railjack has been effectively in the works since 2017, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they've obviously been trying it, they've been experimenting with it, and they're deciding, oh, yep, this is going to work. Let's get out of the door. And they decided that last year. So they obviously spent a year on it. So when it came to the Kingpin system, they had spent a chunk of time developing it, didn't like it, and then they just dropped it. They let it fall by the wayside. That was my point.
Yeah. All right. So
poorly executed.
I think that we've kind of gone off rails a little bit with the Railjack. I really hope that you're right, because I remember seeing, I think they showed up like a concept around that time for like the Railjack ship, which we have now, Railjack, and they spent a year on it. And who knows how long until it's actually released. So good hopes for Railjack. I wish it's gonna be the best thing it can possibly be, because that would be the best for all of us. But bringing it back to kind of like the closing of our question here, we've looked into how Warframe could be more new player friendly, casual player friendly. I think we've gone over the gradual introduction of things, like letting people know that the next quest is coming up, that there is somewhere they have to go to do a next quest, letting people know that they might have to use an amp, like introducing them to amps way before you actually have to use them in something like a sacrifice. We've talked about forced prize, having how forced prize abruptly ends and having nothing to do is a problem. The mod system, how it's really hard to get information, you're linked to the outside of the game, is a bit of a problem. But aside from all those things that the game could be improved, do you think that as it stands right now, the question of the title of this podcast is Warframe new player and casual player friendly? Do you think that it is or isn't, or anywhere on that scale, and if so, why?
I certainly think it's on the scale, and I certainly think it leans towards yes, but for only one major fact. The fact that the community is so damn awesome. The fact that the community wants to help other players and things like that. They see a low MR player, they'll do their damnedest to make sure that they know what they're doing, because they want to A, make sure Warframe stays alive, and B, make sure that they get the best experience they can. So for that reason alone, yes, I think Warframe is new player and casual player friendly. No, it's new player friendly. I wouldn't necessarily say it's casual player friendly, because without the time synced into getting your amp, into getting the best weapons, things like the sacrifice and stuff you can struggle with, much like Cypher Invictus did.
All right, I can see that. I would agree that it's on a scale. I would say that it tips towards no, depending on whether you're a gamer or a player. Like based on your definitions, I think that it tips towards the yes. If you're a gamer, so if you're interested, if you're completely new to this game, you're kind of interested to getting more information about it and learning about it and like kind of seeking out this information, you can find a community. And with seeking out information, I don't necessarily mean going to the wiki, but I mean putting a question in chat. That's what I would call seeking out information, because you have to take the initiative, and you can. I think it tips to the yes if you're a gamer, but if you're a player, I think it tips towards the no. And as an example, if I pick up Call of Duty, if I pick up Overwatch, if I pick up Fortnite, I jump in, I play right away, and there is a little bit of a tutorial, but it makes sense. And like the way that you adapt the information, the way that it's thrown at you, you throw it at someone. Like those games, you can put forward to someone. If you're at a party, they've never seen it before, they can grab it, they start playing with it. Warframe is more complex, and I think that in order for it to be like new player and casual new player and player friendly, like new player, not new gamer, but new player friendly, it needs to be able to be picked up, especially at the start, by someone, by like your mate at a party, where it's like, what are you playing? Oh, I'm playing Warframe. Oh, can I try it? Yeah, sure, here. The new account, go play it. And then they like pick it up, and like within like half an hour, they're like, oh yeah, I like this. I can see myself becoming ninja in Warframe. It's like, that's not really the case. I think that there it tips a little bit towards no, but it's on a scale, so it's not an entire full no. I think it's like kind of like halfway there. It's like if you're a gamer, yes, like it tips towards yes. If you're not, if you're like a player by those definitions, no. So it's like 50-50.
Damn, yeah, you're kind of right. Like, I think I would say yes for the player because I'm involved, right? If I see a friend of mine struggling to do the sacrifice, I will advise them. I will, tell them this is the best thing to do. I remember Loz and I had an argument about, how to get what's the dang, an amp for them to, get an easier time doing the sacrifice. So I think yes, you're right. If they're, but the big thing about the players is that they won't necessarily seek out assistance.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wouldn't have thought Cypher or Cthulhu would turn around and ask for help. It's more a case of I'm there, they've asked to play with me, or I'm video editing and I'm there in a group chat and I can assist, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm more prepared to jump for them and help them to make sure that they have the best experience than them seeking. So I'm now tipping towards the no side of things.
Yeah. All right. So I think it's going to be questions time. So if you guys have any questions, I've already seen that you've asked people around. But if you guys have any questions, leave them here. They can be related to the topic or not at all, whatever you want to ask. But before we jump into the questions, there's a special announcement that we have to make, because today, about an hour before this podcast started, or a day before, or 4 days before, depending on where you watch this. If you watch this as a highlight, it was like 4 days ago. If you watch this on the YouTube, it's like yesterday. Joey Zero released the weekly Warframe finale show with an amazing lore segment by yours truly, Xeno, and a little shitty video by mine, and a lot of Joey and Sandy stuff. A great cinematic thing from Sandy and Joey. So make sure you check it out, because it's like 30 minutes of insanely goodness. It's the finale of the Joey Sir Weekly Warframe show. Make sure you check it out, because it's really, really cool and I like it. So question time.
Okay, so the first question is Quakeman224 asks, the junction missions to go to the planets, could those be reworked to be more understood? Oh shoot! Sorry. Could you ask the question? Be right back.
All right. So, Xeno's off to probably get some food. The question is the junction missions to go to the planets. Could those be rewarded to be more understood for the players, or are those not good enough to help the player? I think that the junction missions are an interesting thing. Like their intent is to give players some requirements before they progress. So they have to do this one thing to pass. I think that they serve that in a sense. I think that their introduction, like the way that they're fused with the story, is a little bit weird. Because all of a sudden you have this one random tower, this one random node where you have to go to and you have to click on it, and then there is like a Warframe, and I don't know what that Warframe is, I don't know what that Spectre is, and I need to do challenges and I have to fight it, but what does it mean? I think that the way that it could be improved massively is if you were to have this kind of like quest icon that I was talking about before. If you have like a quest icon within that you have within Destiny that kind of like moves you towards planets. Let's say it's on Uranus, because that's where the second dream is. Like, you have to go there, but then there's this story of whatever the story is behind the Spectres, that you're like liberating planets or you're moving past planets. Like, why are you doing those junctions? What is the purpose of completing them? Why should you go towards them? Because seeing a junction and seeing them with like requirements, I think because there's no real motivation as to do them other than progressing through the planets. Like, if I'm on Earth and I see like the requirements on Earth, I don't necessarily know what they're on Earth, but like if I see the requirements but I don't know why I'm doing it, it's like, well, I could do it, but I could also go to the planes and I'll just stick around the planes and I will never do the second dream. So I think that the way to improve them, yes, they do serve the function of like giving the list, and I think that's alright. Like they give some requirements you can't progress unless you do them. But I think that there needs to be like a little bit more of like a narrative as to why you're doing them, like motivate people a little bit more as to like nudge them towards them, like, hey, what's going on here? Check this out. Like, you gotta do it and like make people feel good about doing it, because right now you're defeating a Spectre, and I don't even know what the Spectres are and why they're like our Warframes and why we're fighting them and why they're hostile towards us and anything about them.
I concur. Actually, no, to be fair, technically we do know the lore entry, but no, the junctions on their own are not good enough. They need supporting systems, right? So I completely agree with what Michelle just said. Right, shall we move on to the next question?
Yep.
So Nathus asks, would you enjoy going back to try the new player experience again yourself? I know Xeno kind of has with the Switch. So this is obviously directed to...
All right, so I've done it 1.5 years ago when I started both on the Xbox One and the PlayStation at the same time. I thought it was fun to relive it, especially for I was like, oh my god, this is so new, and I'm uncolored Excalibur. I got no mods. It's so fun. However, it also made me realize things as how hard it is to get around to mods, and how nice it is to have all the mods. So I think it's a very good learning experience. It was for me. I wouldn't do it again. Right now, without them having changed something, without them having changed systems, like big systems, than when I did it for the last time, I wouldn't do it, because like it's a lot of time into replaying the game. And I've done it like 3 times or so. So yeah, I've had my share. If you're like a veteran player, though, and you're kind of like, if you're a no-lifer, if you're a Warframe no-lifer, and you're like, oh my god, new players have it easy, go try out the new player experience. Go start up a new account. Like there are some things that you will learn to appreciate a lot. So, what do you have there? What kind of good food?
Twin King prawns.
Ooh. All right, let me see if there's another question around here. Let me see.
To be honest, I went back to play Warframe's starting game content only because I was uncertain of playing that early content again.
Mm-hmm.
I felt that because it's been years since I've played it, there's a huge disconnect between me and the newer players. That's why I started playing it again. Zachamus asks, I have a question. Can I have a bite? No.
Not even if not even when they say please. I mean, they haven't said please.
But,
So.
oh,
Gotta say please if you want something. But yeah, I think that those are the questions for today. That's the podcast for today. So yeah, guys, thank you so much for tuning in again this week. If you want to check out the podcast on any other way that you're listening for it right now, we are live every week on Tuesday, such as today, at 7:30 European time on twitch.tv/Postma. Highlights will be up on Friday on youtube.com/XenoGelion. Tomorrow, this will be live on youtube.com/PostmaLoneGames. And we are moving to bring this podcast also. The FrameCast will be also live on various podcast programs like Google Podcasts and iTunes and Spotify. I'll let you know when that's all done, but I've been trying to bring it out there. So if you like to put this on your headphones while you're running around, or while you're cycling, or while you're in your car getting to work without having YouTube open or Twitch open, we're working on that too. But make sure you tag Xeno on youtube.com/XenoGelion. And yeah, we'll see you guys